The lie of happiness. In the modern world, happiness has become a god dot. It's sold on magazine covers, preached by influencers, promised by pills, and offered by endless algorithms designed to keep you scrolling. From childhood, you're told, be happy, do what makes you happy, follow your bliss. But Friedrich Nietzsche, the fierce German philosopher with eyes like steel and words like thunder, called this out as a dangerous delusion. Man does not strive for happiness. Only the Englishman does that. With one sentence, Nietzsche spat in the face of a culture obsessed with comfort. He saw what most people don't, that the pursuit of happiness isn't a noble quest. It's a trap. Once in a quiet German town, a boy named Elias lived a life most would envy. Middle class, stable, shielded from real suffering. He had everything that promised happiness, security, friends, entertainment. But something inside him felt hollow. No amount of video games, parties, or likes on his social feed could fill it. So he asked his philosophy teacher, an aging man, known for quoting Nietzsche in the middle of math class, "Why do I feel like something's missing, even though I'm doing everything right?" The teacher smiled sadly and said, "Because happiness is for children. You're ready for something greater." Nietzsche believed that life is not meant to be pleasant. It's meant to be lived. And living, truly living, demands that you suffer, strive, fail, and rise again. He saw suffering not as a mistake, but as the most honest part of existence. In his words, to live is to suffer, to survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. Contrast this with modern culture, where suffering is treated like a glitch, something to be avoided, medicated, or ignored. Got anxiety? Take this pill. Feeling lost? Buy this course. Unhappy with your life? Just manifest something better. It's all noise. All distraction. Nietzsche warned us. If you run from pain, you will remain small. Look around. Most people live in quiet desperation, avoiding discomfort like it's death itself. They choose numbness over intensity, comfort over risk, short-term pleasure over long-term greatness. They want happiness. Yes, but they don't ask, what will it cost me? Because the real cost is everything that makes you powerful. Discipline, struggle, sacrifice, courage, isolation. Nietzsche called these the forces of becoming. Without them, you remain just another member of the herd, soft, dull, and obedient. When Elias began to study Nietzsche deeply, something inside him started to shift. He stopped asking, how can I feel better? And started asking, how can I become stronger? That was the beginning of his transformation. He stopped blaming others. He faced uncomfortable truths. He started doing hard things, waking up early, lifting heavy weights, quitting cheap entertainment, studying ideas that made his brain ache. His friends laughed at him, called him intense, too serious. But Elias didn't care. He had tasted something deeper than happiness. He had found purpose. Nietzsche argued that happiness is not a goal. It's a side effect. Like a shadow, it follows those who walk towards something greater. But chase the shadow itself, and you'll be forever lost. Consider the athlete who suffers through years of brutal training, injuries, and setbacks, only to win a gold medal. Is he happy in the usual sense? No. He's beyond happy. He is transformed. Or the mother who sacrifices sleep, time, and energy for her child. She's not chasing joy. She is living in service of something higher. Nietzsche's truth: the more meaningful your life becomes, the less you care about happiness. He introduced the idea of the Bermensch, the overman, one who creates his own values instead of adopting those of the weak, the fearful, the obedient. The Bermensch doesn't ask, what makes me happy? He asks, what makes me powerful? What will make me into the kind of being who can bear existence without lying to himself? This is the brutal truth of Nietzsche's philosophy. You must outgrow happiness. You must kill your craving for comfort. You must abandon the herd and walk alone, even into the storm, because only then will you find what truly matters: strength, clarity, autonomy, The power to shape your own life. As Elias continued his journey, he began to feel something new. Not happiness, but aliveness. Every challenge he embraced made him feel more real, more awake. There were days he wanted to quit, days he hated the pain. But even then, he knew this is what it means to live. Not to escape suffering, but to face it with open eyes. And strangely, as he grew stronger, something unexpected emerged. Joy. Not the shallow joy of a dopamine hit, but a quiet, burning satisfaction. The kind you only feel when you know you're becoming something more than you were yesterday. Nietzsche didn't want you to be happy. He wanted you to be worthy of happiness, to earn it by becoming great, not begging the world to hand it to you. So if you're tired of feeling empty despite having everything, maybe it's time to stop chasing happiness. And start seeking power. Not the power to control others, but the power to master yourself. The will to power. What do you truly want? Not the surface level answers, not comfort, not approval, not even love. Strip all that away. Underneath every desire, every ambition, every silent craving for more, Nietzsche believed there was one fundamental force driving you. The will to power. This is not the will to survive, not the will to pleasure. Those are animal instincts. The will to power is human. It's the force that compels you to rise, to grow, to overcome. It is not about controlling others. It is about commanding yourself. Elias was beginning to understand this. After months of rejecting comfort and choosing difficulty, he no longer asked, "What makes me happy?" That question now felt small, weak, misleading. Instead, he asked, "What strengthens me? What makes me harder to break? What makes me a creator, not a consumer?" Each morning he woke before dawn and ran through the freezing streets, not to prove anything to anyone, but to face his own mind, his own resistance, his inner coward. There was no audience, no applause, only the battle between who he was and who he could become. And that's what Nietzsche meant when he spoke of the will to power, not the desire for safety, but the urge to evolve. To will your transformation into being. In his writings, Nietzsche explained, life itself is will. To power. Even a flower breaking through concrete, a child learning to speak, a man choosing to walk toward his fear, all expressions of this force. Where there is life, there is striving. Where there is no striving, there is decay. Modern culture tells you to aim for balance, to stay within your limits, to be kind to yourself. But Nietzsche would laugh at that advice. Not because cruelty is virtue, but because most kindness today is an excuse to stay weak. The will to power does not whisper. It roars. Rise higher. Face more. Build something greater than you. One evening, Elias sat in his room, exhausted. After training, his muscles ached, his mind fogged with fatigue. Yet he felt more alive than he ever had when chasing cheap happiness. He wrote in his journal, "I no longer seek peace. I seek strength. I no longer seek approval. I seek self-respect. I no longer wait for life to be easier. I am becoming someone who can handle more." That was the will to power speaking through him. Nietzsche warned of what happens when people suppress this force. They become resentful, bitter, and dangerous. The man who never dares to become strong begins to hate the strong. The woman who never creates begins to tear down what others build. And soon a culture is born, not of excellence, but of resentment. A world where weakness is celebrated and power is called evil. Nietzsche saw this coming. He called it slave morality, a value system built by the weak to make strength look sinful. According to slave morality, being meek is noble, obedience is virtue, ambition is selfish, pride is dangerous. But Nietzsche challenged this. He said, what is good? All that heightens the feeling of power, the will to power, power itself in man, not domination, not cruelty, but the internal, Drive to become more, to turn your pain, fear, and weakness into fuel for growth. In ancient myth, the hero descends into darkness before rising again. He slays dragons not because he wants gold, but because facing the dragon makes him powerful. Nietzsche believed life was no different. You were born with a spark, a flame of potential, but the world wants to smother it. Your parents, teachers, and peers want you to be polite, safe, and predictable. They want you to fit in, not to stand out, but the will to. Power demands the opposite. It says, do not obey, overcome, do not conform, create, do not shrink, expand. As Elias transformed, people around him grew uncomfortable. Some called him arrogant, others distanced themselves, but he didn't care. He wasn't becoming someone they could understand. He was becoming someone he respected. Nietzsche called this the path of the Übermensch, the overman, the next evolution of human being. Not bound by old values, not a slave to morality, guilt, or comfort, but a self-creator. A walking contradiction to everything the world says is normal. The Übermensch doesn't ask, is this what people expect of me? He asks, is this what my highest self demands? So why do most people never awaken their will to power? Because it's hard. Because it hurts. Because to truly grow, you must break who you were. And most people are too afraid to die to their old selves. They prefer comfort to truth, pleasure to growth, numbness to transformation. Nietzsche knew this. That's why he wrote not for the masses, but for the few. The rare ones who would choose pain with purpose over pleasure without meaning. One night, Elias stood in front of a mirror, his body lean, hardened, his eyes sharper. He was no longer the boy who had asked why he felt empty. He knew the answer now. He had once lived like a leaf in the wind, drifting, consuming, pleasing. Now he lived like a flame, focused, wild, untamed. And deep in his core he felt it, power, not over others, but over his own mind, his own actions, his own life. Nietzsche once said, become who you are, not who they want you to be, not who it's easy to be, but the most dangerous, most disciplined, most authentic version of yourself. That is the will to power. That is the path. And that is what separates those who live from those who merely exist. Embracing the abyss. He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. Friedrich Nietzsche. There comes a moment on every journey of transformation when the light fades and the abyss appears. For Elias, that moment came not with a loud crash, but in silence. He had been pushing hard, mentally, physically, emotionally. He had cut off distractions, ended shallow friendships, silenced the noise. For a while, that silence was empowering. It brought clarity. But now, something else lurked inside it. Something dark. Late at night, he began to feel it. Not fear exactly, but emptiness. A vast, quiet hollowness staring back at him. He no longer wanted to go back to the old life. But moving forward felt like walking blindfolded toward a cliff's edge. This, Nietzsche warned, is inevitable. When you reject the comfortable lies of the herd, you fall into the abyss, the confrontation with nothingness, the loss of certainty, the awareness that life has no fixed meaning unless you give it one. Most turn back at this point. They reach the edge, feel the pull of the void, and retreat back into the arms of pleasure, religion, or society's ready-made beliefs. But Nietzsche challenged you not to run, but to descend. The abyss is not your enemy. It is your initiation. The abyss is many things. For some, it is the death of old values. For others, it is the confrontation with meaninglessness. For all, it is a mirror, showing you what remains when you strip everything away. Elias began to question himself. Who was he without his past? Without the praise of others? Without comfort, distraction, or external rewards? He sat alone in the dark, staring at his reflection, and asked, What am I doing all this for? No voice answered. Just a silence. But Nietzsche had already offered a response. Not a comforting one, but a courageous one. Man is a rope stretched between the animal and the bermensch, a rope over an abyss. That tension between what you were and what you could become is the struggle of existence. Elias started reading Nietzsche's idea of Amor Fati, the love of fate. Not passive acceptance, but active embrace of everything that happens, including suffering. My formula for greatness in a human being, Nietzsche wrote, is Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. At first, Elias resisted this. Love his suffering, embrace loss, fear, confusion. But slowly, it made sense. If he could embrace only the joy, then his strength was conditional. But if he could embrace the pain too, if he could say yes to all of life, then he would be free. The abyss teaches you that life owes you nothing. No answers, no rewards, no guarantees. But it also teaches you that you owe life everything. Your courage, your authenticity, your will to create meaning in a world that offers none by default. It is in this space where everything feels uncertain that the strongest people are forged. Because when you face the abyss and refuse to look away, something extraordinary happens. You begin to build your own values. Most people never create values. They inherit them. They believe what their parents believed. They want what their friends want. They follow rules written by people long dead. Nietzsche despised this. He called for a new kind of human, one who writes his own code, one who says yes to life, even its cruelty, and emerges stronger. This doesn't mean becoming immoral or lawless. It means becoming sovereign, so rooted in truth that you no longer need external approval to live well. Elias began to feel this shift. He stopped seeking validation for his choices. He stopped comparing his progress to others. He began to trust something deeper, his own direction. That was the abyss turning into a foundation. But, Nietzsche warned, if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. This isn't just poetic. It's a brutal psychological truth. If you stare in the darkness too long without grounding, you risk being swallowed by it. Some, in their quest for strength, become cold, numb, cynical. They confuse power with cruelty, independence with isolation. They forget that the goal is not to become a monster, but to become whole. Elias walked this edge carefully. There were days he felt empty, disconnected. He trained his body, sharpened his mind, but what of his heart? One night he returned to Nietzsche's lesser quoted lines. Not the angry critiques or defiant manifestos, but the vulnerable confessions. Invisible threads are the strongest ties. You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star. He realized that the abyss doesn't just reveal darkness. It reveals the raw materials of creation. Chaos is not the end. It is the beginning. True power, Nietzsche said, is creative. Not in the artistic sense alone, but in the deepest human sense, to look into nothingness and bring something beautiful out of it. Elias began to write again. Not for success, not for an audience, but as a way to make sense of the void, to give form to the formless. This is what Nietzsche meant by living dangerously, not recklessly, but intensely, facing reality without illusion, and still choosing to affirm life, not as it could be, not as it should be, but as it is. When you embrace the abyss, you embrace truth. Not comfortable truths, but brutal ones. That life is uncertain. That death is inevitable. That meaning must be made, not found. But in that embrace, you stop being a slave to fear. You stop clinging to false promises of happiness. You become someone who can walk through hell and not break. Someone who is free. Elias was no longer afraid of the void. He had walked through it. He had returned, not unscathed, but reborn. Now, when others panicked at uncertainty, he remained calm. Where others sought escape, he sought purpose, because he had learned the secret Nietzsche hid in his fiercest lines. Suffering is not the enemy. Weakness is. And the abyss is not there to destroy you. It's there to reveal you. Beyond happiness, toward meaning and strength. If you were forced to live your life over and over again, endlessly, in every detail, would you say yes? This was Nietzsche's most haunting test, his idea of eternal recurrence. Not just a thought experiment, but a weapon, aimed at the heart of your excuses, your compromises, your wasted time. What if some day or night a demon were to steal after you into your loneliest loneliness and say to you, this life, as you now, live it. You must live once more and innumerable times more. Would you throw yourself down and gnash your teeth? Or would you answer, you are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine? This is not about metaphysics. It's about how you live. Do you live in such a way that you would choose it again? Do you live with such intensity, such truth, such power, that even your suffering would be worth repeating? Most people would panic at the thought. Their lives are filled with regret, avoidance, and aimless motion. They chase happiness, but live without depth. They escape pain, but also meaning. They exist, but do not live. Elias remembered the first time he read Nietzsche's challenge. It struck him like a lightning bolt. Would he repeat his life endlessly? Would he relive the nights he avoided responsibility? The relationships built on lies? The hours lost to comfort? No, not then, but now? Now, he was beginning to feel something different. Not pride, but alignment. He was living a life he chose, not one that was chosen for him. He didn't always feel good, but he felt real. And that, Nietzsche argued, was the highest form of power, to will your life so completely that you would live it again. As it is, most people confuse happiness with the absence of pain. But real power begins when you accept that pain is a part of life and still choose to move forward. Elias no longer needed to be happy all the time. He understood now. Happiness is fleeting. Meaning is enduring. Power is eternal, when it's rooted in who you've become, not what you happen to feel. Nietzsche didn't want you to smile your way through life. He wanted you to build a life so worthy that even its darkest days were bearable. That is the essence of meaning. Meaning doesn't come from comfort. It comes from sacrifice, direction, and creation. Nietzsche wrote, he who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. People without a why collapse at the first sign of struggle. People with a why, they endure. They transform pain into purpose. Elias began to live by this. Every obstacle became a test. Every setback a sharpening stone. He stopped running from difficulty and started asking, what is this shaping me into? He realized that the ultimate freedom is not doing whatever you want. It's becoming someone who can handle whatever happens. Our culture tells us to chase ease. Don't overwork. Don't overthink. Don't take life so seriously. Nietzsche had no patience for this. He said, live dangerously. Build your cities on the slopes of Vesuvius. This wasn't recklessness. It was a challenge. To live with intensity, with urgency, as if your life matters, because it does. Nietzsche wanted you to become an artist of your life. Not passive, but active. Not drifting, but directing. To sculpt your soul, not according to society's mold, but according to your highest potential. Elias reflected on what he had become. He wasn't happy in the way most people understood it. He was rarely comfortable. He had fewer friends, but deeper conversations. He laughed less, but meant it when he did. He wasn't chasing approval. He was chasing his ideal self. He looked in the mirror now and saw someone he respected. Not perfect, but aligned. Not free from suffering, but free from submission to it. This was Nietzsche's vision of the Bermensch. Not a god, not a tyrant, but a man who creates his own path. A man who lives on his own terms, even when the World mocks him. The world teaches you to avoid suffering. Nietzsche teaches you to use it. To squeeze meaning from every drop of pain. To build strength from every failure. To become someone so complete, so integrated, that you no longer need happiness to feel whole. Because happiness will come. But it must find you on your path, not chasing it like a beggar. This is the brutal truth Nietzsche gave the world. You must seek power, not happiness. Because happiness will lie to you, but power built through truth, will, and meaning. That will carry you through everything. Elias understood this now. His journey wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But he no longer feared the abyss. He no longer craved applause. He no longer wished for an easier life. He had become someone worthy of the life he was creating. Nietzsche left behind no final answers, only fire. He wanted to set you ablaze, to wake you from the trance of comfort, to make you question the lies you've inherited, to show you that power is not in control over others, but in the control over your own spirit. He did not want followers. He wanted creators. He wanted people like Elias, people like you. So ask yourself, are you living a life you would choose again endlessly? Do you wake up with a purpose greater than pleasure? Are you building strength, or are you sedating your weakness? Are you creating or conforming? If the answer frightens you, good. That fear is your call. That's your abyss. Gaze into it. Walk through it. And emerge with something no happiness can replace. Power. Meaning. You.